Hey guys, welcome to another tutorial. So we're going to create a video wall. The video wall you just saw consisting of Polaroid photos / videos. Before we do that, I've also made a template available, which basically would save you some work. This template is available on my Patreon website. So let me show you that first. We'll only take a couple of minutes and then we dive into recreating the whole thing. So I'm going to drag in a new Fusion composition and I'll make it a little bit larger, and then I'll head over to the Fusion tab and I will drag in the template, right? And then I connect the last node, the depth blur, to the media out, and there we go. You've got some placeholder things. Let's double check on the edit page. Yeah, that's all looking good. So what you need to do then is basically have a look here. You can delete basically the placeholder like so. And then basically you use your own videos, right? So let me do maybe these, drag them in. I'll delete the merges and then I'll just pipe them in here. And you can see that things are being updated automatically. Right now, the one thing you do probably want to do, depending on these the length of the media, is just set it to loop, just in case it runs out. So here you can see this is all working. Now the background is just a placeholder as well, so let me delete that and replace that with an image. I'll pipe into the image plane. And there we go. Now you pretty much have the same file as you saw in the intro video. Now, depending on the size of your media in here, right, you may need to reposition things. So if I show the merge 3 here, right, and I'll switch on the lights, there we go. And, you know, if your image is too small, it may not sort of cover the whole background. So you may need to play with that. Maybe position it a little bit differently. You can do that in here, right, in the transform, or do it in the viewport. And in any case, have a little play with it. Now, the great thing about the template here is in this master node, which is basically a custom tool, you can just amend certain things or change certain things. So, for instance, the number of rows and columns, which are always equated here, by the way. So if I want to have 4 or even 10, right, it will update automatically. Also, when I go to frame 90, you see them all being together and there's a little gap in between. That's governed by this one here. So if I set it to 0, right, they're all completely seamless, right? But in any case, that's what you can do with the template out of the box, right? Oh, and actually one more thing. Say you want to have one more image or video. If you copy this one, right, copy and then go here, right click, paste instance. Very important, not paste instance. And then let's drag in another video I hadn't used yet. Well, whatever, it doesn't really matter. But actually, let's use this one. Set it to loop and go in there. All right, and then you need to hook up this one to the replicate 3D. And now you can see this one is added in. But if, for instance, you would want to, because this is a square, right, in here, if you want to basically place it differently, you can double click on the group and go to the crop. And then very importantly, you can change the X and Y offset. But if you change it, do the D instance first, right click D instance, otherwise you will change all of them. So now you can see over here that it is changing. Right? There are a few other things you can do. For instance, you've got here a bender that gives it a slight curve. Now, if you want some of them to look a little bit differently, same thing. On the amount, right click the instance. So for this particular one, you know, you can make it really exaggerated, for instance, or the other way around. So that you can do out of the box with this template. Now let's recreate this from scratch. So on a new timeline, I'm dragging in the Fusion composition, as we always do, make it a bit longer and head into the Fusion tab, and there I'll drag this a little bit to the right to give ourselves a little bit of space. So the basic principle is that we're going to create a bunch of points and we'll replace those points by videos. Now, my initial technique, and some people have used that before, including myself, was basically to use a Shape3D, and let's set this to wireframe, and then basically replace every point with a video. And in principle, that works, right? If I use a replicate 3D and drag in a video and add in an image plane and then pipe it in here, right? And in principle, it will work. If I set this to, there we go. And you just need to play a bit with the scaling, scale down, right? And then in principle that works. However, I found that once I start animating the points, for instance, via inserting a displace 3D here, with multiple videos, it starts behaving erratically. Videos start swapping over and such. I've not found a way around that with that approach. I believe it's a bug, but it may be something that's by design, but I don't actually understand that. So I had to go back to my normal approach to solve things in life, and that's by using particles. So let's delete this. And let's use a P image emitter and a P render. In the P image emitter, I go to the lifespan and set it to something like 10,000, just to ensure that it's long enough. And then what I'll pipe in is a background. Now the background I'll set to white, because the particles will be that color, and then we can see what we're doing. And if I pipe it in here and display this, you can see tiny particles, right? Now, the interesting thing is, if you go to the background and to the image tab and untick the auto resolution, if we say set this to something like 6 by 6, then we've got a neat grid of 6 by 6 pixels. So that's really nice. Now, what if we want that to be in a different aspect ratio, right? Like for instance, 1920 by 1080. The easiest way to do that is basically by going into the Y or the X, and in the Y aspect ratio, type in 1080 divided by 1920. And now all of a sudden, we've got this nice HD ratio. Right, so later on for the Polaroids, which we will be working on in a moment, we'll use a different aspect ratio, but this is here to illustrate the approach. Now I want things to be flexible, so what I'm going to do is add a custom tool, like so. Let's rename that to master, and we're going to use this number in 1 to drive the grid size. So let's set this to 6, let's pin it, let's go to the background, and let's change the width so that it's driven by an expression, and let's drag that in there, and expression here. There we go. Right now, basically we can just use this parameter to set the grid size. Right, let's keep it to 6. There we go. So next thing we want to do is add in the replicate 3D. Right, and as we did before, let's use this video. This will go into an image plane. Oh, actually, let's resize it first and also set it to loop. Okay, and then we'll pipe this in here, display it. Okay, now let's play with this size. We know we need to decrease the scale, but by how much? Well, if you want to have the exact value, all you need to do is basically use the grid size. If we add an expression here, scale, and do 1 divided by, and then that grid size, here we go. And now it's an absolute perfect fit, as long as the video has got the same aspect ratio. Like I've got one here, for instance, and that has got a slightly different aspect ratio. And all of a sudden you see here this gap. Right, you can fix that by adding a resize, and then it fits again. And of course it will squeeze or elongate the picture somewhat, but in this case it's barely noticeable. So that's the basic principle. So now if we go into the master, you can see the power of things. So if I change this to 2 or to 8 or to whatever, it all works, right? And if you want to have multiple ones, right? So let's, and we will want to do that, right? Let's pipe this one in here as well. Right, now you've got multiple videos. Now what you need to do in the Replicate 3D, set it to, well, you don't need to do it, but it will look a little bit better. Set it to random, the input mode. And as long as you've got a sufficient number of input videos related to the grid size, then it will look good, in my humble opinion. All right. So now we're going to make these particles move, and we're going to use the P custom for that. So the movement should go over, or should happen on the Z axis. So let's add a P custom, my weapon of choice. And we're going to use this number in 1 basically to drive the scaling of the Z movement. So how far apart do these things need to go at the maximum? So if we set this to 2, we'll use this number. So we set this number 1 to 2. We go then to the particle tab, and for the position Z, we'll use a rand S function. So rand S minus, so open brackets, minus N1, comma N1. So that refers to the value we just set, 2. So minus 2, comma 2, comma, and then we'll use a seed, and that will be the ID of the particle. That basically means that every particle will get a different random value between minus 2 and 2. And that's what you can see here. So nice. So now we want this to move. Now, how can we do this? Well, we can basically use another number in 2, and we'll animate this from 1 to 0. And then we can say N2 times this function. So at the extreme, will be 1 times the random function. So you have the previous result. And at the end, it will be 0 times this, and then it will be at the base position of 0. Of course, now we could use this, and there you can see the movement. Now, we could, of course, keyframe this and everything, and we will do some keyframing, but I want there to be easing available. So what I'm going to use is use a animation curve, right? And then go to the modifiers tab, set it to custom, set this to easing, and I'll want to use exponential, but now it won't do anything because it needs to use this input one. So this is the one we'll be keyframing. So at position or time 0, I want that to be 1, right? And they're really far apart. I keyframe that. Then we'll go to frame 90. Then we'll set that to 0. Then I want it to remain stationary for a couple of seconds. So let's go to frame 150 and set it to 0 again. And then ultimately, let's head over to frame 240. There's another 90 frames. And let's set it back to, back to 1. And now we should have this movement. Right, stay stationary, and there it goes again. So that's the basic principle. There's just one thing I want to adjust to make it a little bit more sophisticated. Right, as you can see here, they're all arriving at the middle, at the 0 position at the same time. Some will move a bit faster and such, but in principle it's all at the same time. I want some there to arrive earlier than others, so I'm going to create an offset for this. The offset I'll do again, go back to the Tools tab, and then we'll go to the Inter tab, and I'll set a random offset for each particle. So I'll use the same rand S function, and let's set it between 0 and 0.3. And based on the particle ID, but let's do particle ID times 2. And then we'll use that on the main particles tab. So instead of N2, let's do between brackets N2 minus that offset, minus I1, and then close brackets. There we go. Sorry, there was a little typo there. So you can see here that things have changed, but it is overshooting. So what I want to do is, I don't want this N2 minus I1 to go below 0, because then it overshoots. So what I can do is just add a max function. So max open brackets, and then you've got the N2 minus I1, and then close brackets, and then comma 0, and then close brackets again. And now it will ensure that it will never go below 0. So now you've got a nice movement where some, you can see it here, arrive later than others. And if you want that to be more pronounced, right, you can change this minus or this .3 to .5, for instance. Okay, so that's the way we make it a little bit more interesting. All right, on to the next part. So this is really the hardest part. The rest is all really good fun. So what we can do is add a merge 3D, and let's pipe a camera into that. And let's display the merge 3D. And then let's pull out the camera a little bit. And let's display it here as well. And then let's see the camera angle. Now, say this is the end position. I want the field of view to be a little bit wider, right? So I can change, for instance, the focal length so that more is visible. So something like this. And then, if we then play the animation, bang. So really nice, as we saw in the example. Now in the example as well, there was some rotation, and that's really cool because the rotation we can do on the Z-axis, right, over here. But let's tie that to that, to the P custom, to the number step, to the same one we just animated, right, the number in 2. This number in 2. I should really unpin this one here. So this number in 2. So let's link that. So let's pin this one, go to the camera, and say at the start of the animation, I want the camera to be at a 45-degree angle. But if we make that into an expression, then we can say minus 45 times, and then let's pick whip it to the number in 2. And now everything's linked together. So, and the camera angle and the particle movement, they're in sync. And then you get this right nice sort of consistent movement. If you just want to have that rotation at the start, you can put an expression around this. If, with double I, open brackets, if the time is smaller than 90, right, for the first bit, then comma, use the movement we just saw. But after that, let's just stick to 0, so comma 0. There we go. So now basically we have the initial movement, the rotation, but then at the end, when it moves out again, or when the particles move out again, the camera doesn't rotate anymore. Okay? So that's really the last hard bit, I suppose. Then you put in a renderer 3D and you display that. Let's set it to OpenGL. And you could set the accumulation effects and depth of field here, but sometimes it's a little bit slow. So a trick I sometimes use is by just using a depth blur after the renderer 3D, but that requires a Z channel, so we need to enable that. Let's do that here, Z channel. Then if we go to the depth blur, and then let's go to the here, let's zoom in a little bit, and I want to set the focal point based on the position here at the middle, right? That needs to be in focus. And let's set the Z scale to something like 0.1, and let's increase the blur size. So now we should have something that you can see here, things are out of focus and they move into focus. Now this may be a little bit much, right? So we can set this a bit lower, or we could set the Z scale a bit higher, right? So you need to play around with the values a little bit here, right? But that in principle works. The next thing I want to do is to ensure that the video only starts playing once it's in the stationary middle position, right? Before that I want it to be static. So what I can do is use a time stretcher, right? So this time stretcher, you can basically use the source time here. Throughout the first 90 frames, I want nothing to happen, i.e. the source time needs to stay at 0. And after that, I want it to move. So how do I do it? Well, I can use an expression, but as I want that to be easily updatable later on, I'm going to use the master and set this to 90, the number in 2. Now in the time stretcher, I'm going to create an expression so that I can refer to the variable we just created. So if time smaller than, and let's pick whip this number 2, 90, then display frame 0, comma 0. Otherwise, I want it to basically start playing. So what should that be? Well, after that, I want to start at frame 0, then 1, 2, 3, and 4. So what will it be? Well, it's then time, and that at that point it will be 90 minus the original delay, the number in 2, and that's basically it. And then we close brackets, and then we're done. So now we see something where everything remains static. And then at frame 90, it starts moving. All right, so last thing really I want to do is to turn it into a nice looking Polaroid. So let's work on one and let's copy it over then to all the others. So the time stretcher is good. We've got a resize, right, to make it 90/20, nice, and then put it into an image plane. But something needs to happen in between, right? So I want, first of all, this to be cropped to a square. So let's use the crop tool and let's set it to 1000 by 1000. And let's for now display it here as well. So we've got this crop here. Now I want the offset for this particular one. Okay, it's looking good. Now I want that to be merged on a Polaroid type size. So let's do a background. Let's set it to wide. Untick auto resolution. Set it to 800 by 1000. Right, then we've got this. And if we merge this on top, actually pipe this in here, then, okay, it's not working yet, right? Because it's a little bit too large. But in the merge itself, we can set its size to be smaller, something like this. And let's then move it up a bit. And there we go, our Polaroid. Now, I don't know what the exact size is. I didn't really look it up. I just know the overall ratio, but of course you can play with it. So maybe something like this. Now, in terms of what does it look like in 3D, this, but let's switch on the light for now. I want to change the material a little bit and remove some of that intensity, or lower the intensity somewhat and increase the exponent. Right, something like this. Now you can do a lot more with it. You can add some grime and dirt to it and all that, but let's keep it relatively simple. Now, one more thing I would like to do though is add a Bender 3D, right? And there you can change the amount a little bit, right? So that there's a slight that is not completely straight, adds a little bit to the realism. So that in principle would be the way to get a Polaroid here. Now, so let's have a look at the overall thing. Now, all the sizing is messed up. Now, the reason is that in our background, our ratio, our pixel aspect ratio was wrong. So we need to set that by 10 divided by 8. Here we go. Oh, and of course, this particular one, the lady here, the young lady here, we notice here there's no gap, and I forgot to do that. So let's use the master again to set a gap value. Say that's 0.01. And then in our replicate 3D, I want to go to this expression and do minus, and then pick whip to that value we just set, the number in 3. There we go. So now we can set the gap via this. Right, nice. Okay, so this all seems like a lot of work, but really the thing you can do now is to bunch this all together. Hit Ctrl G, now you've got a group. And if you then right click, copy, and do paste instance, There you go. Right, so we've got already some here. And now we can just drag in some of our assets like so. Let's get rid of the merge. Set them all to loop. There we go. And now all we need to do is just pipe them in. And connect these groups to the replicate 3D, and you can see it updating automatically, as if by magic. Right now, sometimes, right, as you saw, like maybe over here, the head here should move maybe a little bit to the right. And let me see, that was this particular one. So if we look here, if we then double click it, we can just go to the crop, right? And in the crop tool, de-instance the X offset, very important, and then we can move it around. Okay, so good. And that's really the majority of the tutorial done. Now what you need to do is basically hook it up to the media out, right? And then in principle you'll see it on the edit page, right? But I can see something's out of focus, so let's go back here. So let's go to the depth blur. Let's do the sampling again. There we go. Don't know why that went wrong. But in any case, now it should all be good, right? And all you then need to do is maybe add the background. So I'm using this image here, pipe it into an image plane, and pipe that in here, right? And let's display it and set it in perspective. There we go. And then we want to move this a little bit to the back, right? And let's set, no, actually, let's put a renderer here. And now the image is way too small. You see somewhere here at the back. So we need to increase the scale of that image to make up for it being further in Z space. Then I just need to go to the scale and maybe set it to 12. Oh, wait, is that, no, actually let's set this to -6. Further in the back, set this to 12. Maybe something like this. So that's looking good. Right? The other thing I did as well is I added a little bit of perturb to the camera position, to the X and Y position. So let's do that now. So right click, modify with perturb, Y as well, modify with perturb, and then go into the modify tab. And we really want to decrease that strength to maybe 0.01. And let's set it to a random seed. This as well. Right, and then got a little bit of movement, but not too exaggerated. But you can set it to taste, of course, and you can change the speed and such. One very, very last thing, I never set any lights. So let's fix that. So let's add a point light. Let's pipe it in here. And let's change the position of that point light. Maybe something like this, right? And then, of course, in the renderer, we need to switch the lighting on as well. So maybe that's a little bit much. I can decrease the intensity, right? But then also support it with a normal ambient light. Yeah, maybe something like this. And I don't want the background to be affected by it. So in the image plane here, affected by lights, switch that off. There we go. Okay, so now, yeah, you may want to tweak the lights and this, that, and the other, but in principle, this is it. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. It was a little bit longer than I expected, but nevertheless, thanks for hanging in here, and talk to you guys next time. Take care. Bye-bye.